Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be sharing my wedding story like this, but here we are. Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. I, 35 farads, got married last week, and instead of being there for me and fulfilling her duties as maid of honor, my sister, 32 farads, vanished on my wedding day. But that's just the beginning of this mess. First, let me give you some background. My sister and I have always had a complicated relationship. When we're getting along, it's great. We're like best friends, finishing each other's sentences and laughing at inside jokes. But when we fight, it's World War III in our house. We're talking silent treatments, passive-aggressive comments, and the occasional screaming match. It's been like this since we were kids, and honestly, I thought we'd grown out of it. Spoiler alert, we hadn't. Growing up, our relationship was a roller coaster. I remember when she was born, I was so excited to be a big sister. I'd help mom change her diapers and feed her bottles. But as she grew older, things got more complicated. I was the studious one, always with my nose in a book, while she was the social butterfly, surrounded by friends. I'd get frustrated when she'd interrupt my studying, and she'd get annoyed when I'd lecture her about homework. There was this one time when we were teenagers. I was 16. She was 13. We were supposed to be watching our younger cousin, but my sister convinced me to sneak out to a party. Long story short, we got caught, and I took the blame. I was grounded for a month, but I thought it would bring us closer. Instead, it just created this weird dynamic where I felt responsible for her, and she felt guilty but also resentful. I'm the older sister, always been the responsible one. I've got a high-pressure job in finance, and I'm all about planning and organization. My life is a series of spreadsheets, deadlines, and power suits. I thrive on structure and predictability. My sister? She's the free spirit of the family. She changes jobs like she changes her hairstyle, frequently and without much warning. She's traveled to more countries than I can count, and has a new passion every other month. Don't get me wrong, I admire her zest for life, but sometimes it's exhausting just watching her. Our differences have always been stark. Where I see stability, she sees stagnation. Where she sees adventure, I see unnecessary risk. It's like we're speaking different languages sometimes. But despite all this, we've always made an effort to stay involved in each other's lives. Even after we both moved out of our parents' place, we'd meet up for coffee or wine nights. Sometimes it was great. Other times it ended with one of us storming out. But hey, that's family, right? Now, about the wedding. I've been with my now husband, 36M, for 4 years. He's my rock, the calm in my storm. When we got engaged earlier this year, I initially didn't plan on having bridesmaids at all. To be honest, I don't have a lot of close friends. It's partly a personal choice, and partly because I'm terrible at keeping in touch. Work keeps me busy, and by the time I get home, I'm usually too drained for social calls. My fiance and I wanted a small, intimate wedding anyway, just close family and a few friends, nothing fancy. But then my parents got involved. They've always been the peacemakers in our family, constantly trying to bridge the gap between my sister and me. They suggested I ask my sister to be my maid of honor. It'll strengthen your bond, they said. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, they said. At first, I was hesitant. I mean, have you been reading this post? Our relationship isn't exactly Hallmark movie material. The thought of her being in charge of my bachelorette party or giving a speech at the reception made me break out in a cold sweat. But after some convincing, a lot of convincing, I started to warm up to the idea. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was our chance to finally put all that childhood drama behind us. Maybe planning this wedding together would bring us closer. Oh, how naive I was. When I asked my sister to be my maid of honor, her reaction surprised me. She was thrilled, like jumping up and down, squealing with joy thrilled. She hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. "Of course I will," she exclaimed. "This is going to be amazing." And for a while, it was. The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding preparations. My sister threw herself into the role with gusto. She organized a beautiful bachelorette party, helped me pick out flowers, and even managed to talk me down from a near meltdown when the caterer messed up our order. For once, we were working as a team, and it felt great. We were laughing together, sharing secrets, and creating memories. It was like we were kids again, but without the rivalry. I remember this one day, about 2 months before the wedding. We were at the florist, trying to decide on centerpieces. I was getting stressed about the budget, and my sister just looked at me and said, "Hey, remember when we used to make daisy chains in the backyard? Mom would get so mad because we'd ruin her garden." And just like that, we were both laughing, all the tension melting away. It felt like we were finally on the same page. Another time, we were addressing invitations late into the night. We'd had a bit too much wine, and my sister started doing impressions of our relatives. Her impression of our great-aunt Edna was so spot on that I laughed so hard, I snorted wine out of my nose. It was moments like these that made me think we'd finally moved past our issues. I started to think that maybe my parents were right. Maybe this wedding was the thing that would finally bring us together. We were bonding over color schemes and seating arrangements, of all things. It felt like we were making up for lost time, filling in the gaps that had grown between us over the years. The week before the wedding, we had a small family brunch. It was just immediate family and a few close relatives. My husband's parents brought along his cousin, 36M, even though we hadn't specifically invited him. This guy has a bit of a reputation in the family. He's been divorced twice and has a habit of making women uncomfortable. But we didn't want to cause a scene, so we let it slide. Little did I know how much trouble this decision would cause. During the brunch, I noticed my sister chatting with this cousin. They seemed to be hitting it off, laughing and talking in the corner. I felt a twinge of unease, but I brushed it off. My sister's an adult, and it was just one afternoon. What could possibly happen, right? Besides, I was too busy fielding last-minute wedding questions from relatives to worry about my sister's love life. The night before the wedding, everything seemed perfect. We had a lovely rehearsal dinner, and my sister gave a touching speech that had me in tears. She talked about our childhood, the good times and the bad. She joked about our fights, but also spoke about how much she admired my strength and determination. "My sister has always been my rock," she said. "Even when I didn't realize I needed one, I was touched." It felt like we'd finally turned a corner in our relationship. She hugged me before we parted ways for the night, saying, "I'm so proud of you, sis. Tomorrow's going to be perfect." I went to bed that night, feeling on top of the world. My wedding was tomorrow, my sister and I were closer than ever, and everything was falling into place. Cut to the next morning. I woke up early, excited and nervous for my big day. My mom and I went to wake up my sister, only to find her room empty. At first, we thought she'd just gone out for an early coffee run or something. But as the hours ticked by and there was no sign of her, panic started to set in. We called her phone, straight to voicemail, sent texts, no response. I even checked her social media, but there was nothing. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. My mind started racing. Had something happened to her? Was she hurt, or had she just left? By noon, it was clear she wasn't coming. I was a mess, torn between worry for my sister and anger at her for abandoning me on my wedding day. My mom was in tears, my dad was furiously making phone calls, and my fiance was trying to keep everyone calm while dealing with his own family's questions. I remember sitting in the bridal suite, still in my robe, staring at my wedding dress hanging on the door. It felt surreal, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life falling apart. Part of me wanted to call off the whole thing, to run out and search for my sister myself, but another part, the part that had always been the responsible one, knew I had to go through with it. We checked with the hotel staff, and they confirmed the worst. My sister had checked out in the middle of the night. She'd left no message, no explanation, nothing, just packed up and left while we were all sleeping. The staff member looked uncomfortable as he told us, like he was delivering news of a death. In a way, it felt like one the death of the relationship I thought my sister and I had been rebuilding. I had a choice to make: postpone the wedding or go ahead without my maid of honor. With guests already arriving and everything paid for, postponing wasn't really an option. So, I dried my tears, fixed my makeup, and walked down the aisle with a smile plastered on my face. The ceremony was beautiful, and for a few hours, I managed to push my sister's disappearance to the back of my mind. I focused on my husband, on our vows, on the love surrounding us. But as we moved into the reception, her absence was like a black hole, sucking the joy out of everything. Where she should have been giving a speech, there was silence. The space beside me in photos, empty. I caught my parents exchanging worried glances throughout the night. My new in-laws were whispering, probably wondering what kind of family they'd just married into. And me? I was trying to keep it together, to enjoy my wedding day, but it felt like I was acting in a play where someone had ripped out half the pages of the script. There was this moment during the reception when the DJ called for the maid of honor to give her speech. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, full of pity and confusion. My husband squeezed my hand under the table, and I managed to whisper to the DJ to move on. But that moment, that silence, it haunts me. As the night wound down and guests started to leave, the reality of the situation hit me full force. My sister, my maid of honor, had abandoned me on my wedding day. No explanation, no warning, just gone. The hurt and betrayal I felt were overwhelming. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and instead, it felt tainted. Now, here I am, a week into my marriage, and I still haven't heard a word from her. My parents are beside themselves with worry. My new husband is trying to be supportive, but I can tell he's frustrated too. And me? I'm a mess of emotions, worried, angry, hurt, confused. I keep running through everything in my head, trying to figure out if I missed some sign, some clue that she was planning this. Did I say something to upset her? Was the pressure of being maid of honor too much? Or is this just another example of her impulsive nature, taken to the extreme? I find myself replaying every conversation we had in the weeks leading up to the wedding. Was there tension I missed? A hint of hesitation in her voice? I can't help but wonder if this is somehow my fault. Did I push her too hard? Expect too much? Or is this just who she is? Someone who runs when things get real. Part of me wants to hire a private investigator to track her down. Another part wants to wait for her to reach out and explain herself. And a small, petty part of me wants to cut her out of my life entirely for ruining what should have been the happiest day of my life. I don't know what to do, Reddit. How do I balance my worry for her safety with my anger at her actions? Should I be out there looking for her? Or respect that she clearly wanted to leave? And if she does come back, how do I even begin to address this with her? Any advice would be appreciated. I feel like I'm losing my mind here, caught between being a worried sister and a furious bride. How do you forgive someone for something like this? Or do you? I find myself staring at my phone, willing it to ring with news of her. Then I look at my wedding photos, her absence glaringly obvious, and I feel the anger bubbling up again. It's like emotional whiplash. My husband is being incredibly supportive through all of this. He's suggested we postpone our honeymoon until we know my sister is safe. Part of me appreciates this, but another part resents that she's managed to disrupt our plans even further. I feel guilty for even thinking about a honeymoon when my sister is who knows where. But I also feel angry that she's stolen this joy from us too. I've always been the responsible one, the one who fixes things, but I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if it can be fixed. Our relationship has always been complicated, but this feels like it might be the final straw. Last night, I found myself going through old photo albums. There we were, gap-toothed and grinning in our backyard, arms around each other. Photos from family vacations, school plays, graduations. In every picture, we're together, often laughing or making silly faces. It's hard to reconcile those images with the current situation. How did we go from those two little girls to this? So here I am, reaching out to strangers on the internet for advice. Because right now, I feel lost. I feel betrayed. And most of all, I feel like I've lost my sister, in more ways than one. What would you do in my situation, Reddit? How do you move forward when someone you love betrays you so deeply? I'm open to any advice, perspectives, or even just words of support. Because right now, I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of emotions with no land in sight. Update 1. Hey Reddit, I'm back with an update, and things have taken an unexpected turn. It's been 5 days since my wedding, and my sister finally showed up. But hold on to your hats, because this is where it gets wild. She wasn't alone. She came back with my husband's cousin, 36M, and they're married. Yes, you read that right. They got married on the day of my wedding. When they walked into our family home hand in hand, I thought I was hallucinating. My sister had this nervous smile, while the cousin looked smug. Before I could process what I was seeing, my sister blurted out, "We got married." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All the worry instantly turned into white-hot anger. I couldn't believe it. My sister, who had disappeared without a word on my wedding day, had actually eloped with my husband's cousin? When I finally found my voice, I asked her what she was thinking. Her explanation: they had been secretly dating for 2 weeks and decided to share my special day by getting married too. She thought this was romantic and that I'd be happy for her. I lost it. All the stress, worry, and hurt from the past few days came pouring out. I yelled at her, asking how she could be so selfish and inconsiderate. Did she have any idea what she'd put us through? How she'd ruined what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life? My sister seemed shocked by my reaction. She genuinely couldn't understand why I was upset. She kept saying things like, "But I thought you'd be happy for me, and we wanted to surprise you." The more she talked, the angrier I got. Our parents finally intervened, but instead of backing me up, they started telling me to calm down. They said things like, "What's done is done, and we should be happy they're safe." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like I was in some bizarre alternate reality where my sister's actions were somehow acceptable. The argument escalated quickly. My husband tried to mediate, but he was clearly uncomfortable, especially given that his cousin was involved. The cousin just stood there with that smug look, occasionally chiming in with comments like, "Love doesn't wait, and you should be thanking us for making your wedding day even more special." As the shouting match continued, more details came to light. They had been texting non-stop since that family brunch I mentioned in my previous post. The night before my wedding, when she hugged me and said everything would be perfect, she'd already made plans to leave. The worst part, she didn't seem to understand why what she did was wrong. She kept insisting that she didn't mean to hurt me, that she thought we could share the joy of getting married on the same day. When I pointed out that she'd left without a word, causing us all to worry sick, she just shrugged and said she'd gotten caught up in the moment. My parents suggested we all sit down and talk it out calmly. But how could I be calm? My sister had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now my parents were acting like I was being unreasonable. The whole situation devolved into a mess of tears, accusations, and hurt feelings. My sister cried, saying she never meant to hurt anyone. My parents pleaded for understanding. My husband and his cousin got into a heated argument about family loyalty. And me, I felt like I was watching my family fall apart. By the end of the night, nothing was resolved. My sister and her new husband left, with her in tears and him muttering about ungrateful family. My parents were upset with me for not being more understanding, and I was left feeling more hurt and betrayed than ever. Now, I'm at a complete loss. My sister's actions have driven a wedge not just between us, but through our entire family. My parents are pushing for reconciliation, but I'm not sure I'm ready to forgive and forget. How can I when she doesn't even seem to understand what she did wrong? My husband is being supportive, but I can tell he's stressed about the family drama too. We haven't even had a chance to enjoy being newlyweds because of all this chaos. Our honeymoon plans are still on hold, and now I'm not even sure I want to go. Reddit, I'm at my wit's end. How do I even begin to navigate this mess? Am I overreacting by being so angry? Should I try to forgive my sister for the sake of family peace, or do I stand my ground and demand that she acknowledge how much she hurt me? Any advice would be appreciated. I feel like I'm losing my family, and I don't know how to fix it, or if it even can be fixed at this point. Update 2. It's been a few weeks since my last post, and things have taken another unexpected turn. Late last night, I was jolted awake by frantic knocking. When we opened the door, there stood my sister, alone, sobbing, and looking devastated. For a moment, I wanted to slam the door in her face, but seeing her so broken, I couldn't turn her away. As soon as she entered, she collapsed into my arms, repeating, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." In the living room, she finally calmed down enough to talk. Her fairy tale romance had turned into a nightmare. The cousin had been lying from the start. He wasn't a successful businessman, but unemployed and in debt. The lavish dates, charged to maxed out credit cards, the promises of a bright future, all lies. Worse still, this was his third marriage, and he hadn't finalized his divorce from his second wife. My sister discovered this when the second wife showed up at their apartment, furious and threatening legal action. As she shared her story, I felt a mix of anger, frustration, and growing sympathy. She had made a terrible mistake, but she was also a victim of manipulation. "I know I messed up," she whispered. "I know I hurt you, and Mom and Dad, and everyone else. I was so stupid, so selfish. I got caught up in this whirlwind romance, and thought I was living in some kind of movie. But it was all fake, all lies, and I threw away my relationship with you for nothing." She looked at me, her eyes red and puffy. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know if I even deserve forgiveness, but I didn't know where else to go. I need help, and I miss my big sister." Those words hit me hard. Despite everything, she was still my little sister, and she needed me. "I want out," she sobbed. "I want a divorce, but I don't know how, and I'm scared. He gets angry sometimes, and I don't know what he'll do if I tell him I want to leave." A protective instinct came roaring back to life. I couldn't let her stay in a potentially dangerous situation. "You can stay here," I said. "We have a spare room. You'll be safe here while we figure things out." The next morning, we called our parents. They were relieved and wanted to come over immediately, but we decided to wait a day or two to start making plans. Over the next few days, we began untangling the mess. I reached out to a colleague who specializes in family law, and we started the process of filing for an annulment. Given the circumstances, we have a strong case. It hasn't been easy. There have been moments of tension when the hurt and anger bubble up again, but we're working through it. My sister is in therapy now, trying to understand her actions and how to make better decisions. Our parents have been incredibly supportive, focusing on helping my sister get back on her feet. They've even offered to help her financially to finish her degree. We haven't heard from my husband's cousin directly, but he's been trying to contact my sister. We've blocked his number and are considering a restraining order if necessary. My husband has been my rock through all of this, even though it's strained his relationship with some family members who think we should support the cousin. In a way, this ordeal has brought my sister and me closer. We're talking more openly than we have in years. She's shared things about her insecurities and fears that I never knew about, and I've opened up about the pressure I've always felt to be the responsible one. We're not fully healed yet. There's still a lot of work to do, a lot of trust to rebuild. But we're making progress. Last night, we even laughed together for the first time in what feels like forever. I know we have a long road ahead. The divorce proceedings will likely get messy, and there's a lot of emotional baggage to unpack. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I feel hopeful. We're facing this as a family, united instead of divided. To those who advised me to cut my sister out of my life, I understand. But seeing her so broken and remorseful, I'm glad I didn't close that door entirely. And to those who encouraged forgiveness, thank you. It hasn't been easy, and there are still moments when I feel hurt and angry, but I'm working on it, one day at a time. I don't know what the future holds, or if our relationship will ever be the same. But I do know that I'm not ready to give up on my sister, or on our family. Thank you, Reddit, for being there through this journey. I'll update again when there's more news about the annulment proceedings. For now, I'm cautiously optimistic. We're healing, slowly but surely. And for the first time in a long time, it feels like we're a family again. Update 3. Hey Reddit, it's been almost 2 years since my last update, and I'm excited to share some news. A lot has changed. I'm pregnant, currently in my second trimester, and we're over the moon. After everything our family has been through, this feels like a new beginning for all of us. When we found out, we were nervous about how everyone would react, but the response has been overwhelmingly positive. My parents are ecstatic about becoming grandparents. They've already started buying baby things, and my mom calls almost daily with advice. But the most surprising reaction has been from my sister. Remember her? The one who disappeared on my wedding day and came back married to my husband's cousin. Well, she's been absolutely amazing throughout this whole process. When we told her about the pregnancy, she burst into happy tears and hugged me tight. Since then, she's been my biggest supporter. She comes over almost every day, bringing healthy snacks, pregnancy books, and endless enthusiasm. It's a far cry from where we were 2 years ago. After the annulment debacle, our relationship was strained. It took time, effort, and a lot of therapy, but we've managed to rebuild our relationship. In many ways, it's stronger now than ever before. My sister has really turned her life around. After the annulment, she went back to school and is now working at a nonprofit that helps women escape abusive relationships. Her experience has given her a unique perspective and drive to help others. She's also been seeing a therapist regularly, working through her issues with impulsivity and self-esteem. The change in her is remarkable. She's more grounded now, more thoughtful in her actions and decisions. As for my husband's cousin, we don't have much contact with that side of the family anymore, which is probably for the best. My husband has been my rock through all of this. He's been incredibly supportive, not just with the pregnancy, but with everything involving my family. Now, as we prepare for this new chapter, I find myself reflecting on how far we've all come. 2 years ago, I thought our family was falling apart. I was angry, hurt, and didn't know if we'd ever recover. But here we are, closer than ever, eagerly awaiting the newest member of our family. My sister has thrown herself into the role of soon-to-be aunt with gusto. She's reading all the same books I am, asking questions during my check-bus, and has even started knitting rather lopsided baby booties. The other day, we were sorting through old family photos for a baby scrapbook, and we came across pictures from my wedding. For a moment, we both tensed up, but then my sister said, "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you that day. But I promise you, I'll be here for every important day from now on, especially for this little one." We both ended up in tears, but they were healing tears. It felt like we were finally closing that painful chapter and looking forward to the future. Our parents have been wonderful too. They've really stepped up, not just in their excitement about the baby, but in how they interact with both of us. I think they've realized how close they came to losing their family, and they're making a conscious effort to be more understanding and supportive. As for me, I'm learning to balance my tendency to plan everything with the unpredictability of pregnancy. It's a challenge, but a welcome one. My sister teases me about my color-coded baby preparation charts, but she's right there helping me tick off items on my to-do lists. I know that having a baby will bring its own challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of the uncertainty. I know that whatever comes our way, we'll face it as a family. To those of you who have followed my story from the beginning, thank you. Your advice, support, and even tough love helped me navigate one of the most difficult periods of my life. I don't think I would have had the strength to forgive and rebuild without the perspective you all provided. And to those going through similar family struggles, hang in there. It's not easy. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the hurt seemed too big to overcome. But if there's love and a willingness to work through the pain and really listen to each other, there's hope. As I sit here, feeling my baby kick, I'm filled with gratitude. Gratitude for my husband, my sister, my parents. Gratitude for second chances and new beginnings. And gratitude for this community, which helped me more than you'll ever know. Thank you, Reddit, for everything.